G'day, Stu here from UAVfutures, and today, well, a video that you guys are going to absolutely love, because what we're going to be doing, this is the $99 FPV Racing quadcopter build. So for 99 bucks, under $100, you can build this bad boy right here. So you might be thinking, Stuart, how good really is a $99 quadcopter? Well, check this out. These things are an absolute beast. Like these are no toys. These are some serious FPV racers. They get up to some crazy speeds. So we've got the standard version here that we're going to be building, and I'm also going to be building, I guess, the pro version or the upgrade version. And everything that I use is going to be linked down in the description below. All the frames, all the parts, everything that you need to get this done. I've scoured the internet, scraped together our pennies. Every single cent counts here, and we've made an FPV racing quadcopter that is awesome for $99. Now you guys can see that I'm absolutely obsessed with FPV drone racing, and that's why I made this video, because I love it so much. I want to share it with you guys. So we've got the $99 quadcopter build right here in the upgrade version, but what I want to also do, I want to give these away, so make sure you're subscribed and definitely hit that like button and drop a comment, and then I'll also be picking one of you guys to post this out to, and yeah, I know you guys are going to absolutely love this. Anyway, make sure you check that description down below, because every single part we do use is linked down below. Let's enough rambling from me, let's stick them on the bench and get started with this build, because I know you guys are going to love it. Alright, let's do it. Alrighty, so here they are on the bench, and this is what the standard version is going to look like when you're all done with it, and this is what the upgrade version is going to look like. And the great part is you can mix and match. So if you've just got $1 or $2 to spare and you think, oh gee, I might want these propellers on this frame or anything like that, you can totally do that, because quadcopters are so versatile, and that's what comes from building our own. You get so much flexibility in everything that you want to put in them. So really, really cool, and these are some serious machines. So this is what they're going to look like. Let's jump in, let's have a look at the parts by themselves, and then let's start putting it together. Alrighty, so here's all the parts on the bench for both the, I guess, the upgraded version and also the standard version. So let's go through the common components that are going to be in both the builds, and then very quickly we'll mention the parts that'll be in the very, very base $99 sort of standard kit, and then also we'll jump over and look for a few bucks more. You can look at some of these upgraded sides, and look, it will make a massive difference. Anyway, let's jump in and look at some of the common components. Alrighty, so the frame we're going to be using is a full carbon fiber frame, and we'll talk about all these components in detail. So we're going to be using the LS210 carbon fiber frame right here. On the outside, we're going to be using some Racer Star 2205 2300 kV motors, and look, they're amazing value actually, and that's going to be common. The ESCs that we're going to be rocking is this 4-in-1 20 amp ESC Racer Star ESCs here. In the middle, you'll notice we're going to be connecting this all up to our PDB, so that's our power distribution board. That's going to be we're going to be able to plug our battery in here, and that's going to send the voltage off to the correct places. And then this is where things differ a little bit. So on the standard side of things, we're going to be using an F1 board, so this is a Naze Rev 6. We've got a bit of a cheaper CMOS camera right here, and our VTX, or our video transmitter. That's what VTX stands for, so you've got your video transmitter over on this side. And then on the little upgrade version, for a few bucks more, and I honestly can't recommend this. Oh, and we're also using just some standard dual blade props. And then on the upgraded version, and honestly just for like $10 more over the entire build or something, not for very much more money at all, we're using an F3 board right here, which is going to be fantastic. That's an SP F3. We've got a proper CCD camera, so that's going to be great, give us much better FPV vision. And we've also got just a little switcher VTX, so it's got a few more options than its little brother right here. But both of these, regardless of what you're going to build, both of these kits, even if you can just get the standard, are still going to build you an awesome, super fun, highly robust, and like a proper FPV racer. Now I'm going to be leaving a link to every single one of the components that I use down in the description below, so definitely check that out. And I'll also include things like batteries and anything else you might be using, and I might also include a whole bunch of extra upgrades. So if some of these sell out, I'll drop in some compatible things, and you can just have a look around and mix and match, I should say, and know that any of those parts that you pick, you can definitely substitute in here depending on how much money you want to spend on your build. But for 99 bucks, let's jump in and let's get started with building our $99 racing drone. Now, for those of you playing along at home, there's just a few essentials we need to build it. So some of the things that I'm going to be using, you're definitely going to be needing a soldering iron, and something like even a cheap pair of wire cutters or strippers. That's definitely going to help in the build. You're going to need a little hex sort of Allen key, so we're going to be using the 2mm to screw our motors in and those sorts of things. And also a little bit of heat shrink. You can probably pick this up anywhere. I'll leave a link down below if you want to order some online, but some of this stuff as well, just to protect some of our wires and stop it shorting out. And the only difference really between the two and the whole wiring, everything is pretty much mix and match. You can use whatever sort of components you like out of the list down below, but the only difference might be which different pads we connect up to our FC or our flight controller between the standard version and also the upgrade. Anyway, enough rambling about the tools. Let's jump in, let's start looking at the frame, and let's start putting some motors on. Oh, and one other thing, if you want to use some Loctite, that's definitely recommended because that's going to stop your bolts coming out in your motors in some hard crashes or something like that. Anyway, on with the build. Alrighty, now the frame we're going to be using, like I said before, is the LS210, and that's because it's a 210mm from motor to motor, perfect for 5-inch races, which is exactly what we're going to build. And that 5-inch means that's the size of the prop that it's going to spin, 5 inches, and that's going to be perfect, especially if you want to stick some GoPro on there and get some very, very juicy, very, very cool looking racing footage. Now what we're going to be doing, you're going to get your motors here. Now these are the Racer Star 2205 motors, and to be honest, they're fantastic. They've really got a good amount of punch, and they're so cheap. So that's why you're going to see both of this frame and these motors in both of the builds. Now what we want to do here, you notice they've got two different tops. So the motors, one of these is a reverse thread. So the black motors, they're going to go on these parts. It's going to go like this. So this is the front of our quadcopter all the way up here. We're going to be screwing these down. And for future reference, this is going to be motor 1, 2, 3, and 4. So it's important that you remember that. I'll probably flash a picture up if we need it in the rest of the build. But yeah, so motors 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we're going to screw the two black ones. So these ones actually have reverse thread on them. So we're going to screw those two in just here, and we're going to screw these two on there. So what we need to do, put a bit of Loctite on them, and also make sure that you can try and get this motor wires running down the middle of your arms if you can. You don't want to be building it with them sticking out this way. So let's screw those down now. Alrighty, just going to put a little bit of Loctite out. So this is going to stop our motors from coming out. You're not going to need much at all. So that's there. You're going to notice you get two different size bolts too. So we're going to be using the shorter ones for this build. So the longer ones, you don't want to use those in this build. So we're just simply going to tap on there, slide it through, and I know it's out of focus, but you guys will see it at the end. So slide this in and just screw it down. So there's one. Let's do that to all 4 of our motors and then cut back and continue with the build. So let's check that out in 3, 2, 1. Whoop! Alrighty, so now all our motors are on here. They should be spinning nice and freely, making sure you remember which one is the front. A good little tip for this one is this little one with a cutout right here at the front, because that's different at the back. Now the next thing we want to do, we need to get ready to put in some little standoffs that's going to hold what we call our stack. So that's where our PDB, our power distribution board, and our ESCs, which are these electronic speed controllers, and also our flight controller are going to be sitting. So what I want you to do, let's open up our 20 amp ESCs right here, our 4-in-1, and inside you're going to find a little pack of standoffs, and we're going to take these out, and then we're going to screw them into the frame. Now you're going to put them on these 4 holes right here, so 1, 2, 3, and 4. You're going to sit them on the top, and then you're going to get one of these little screws right here, screw it in from the bottom, and then you should have all 4 sitting there in a nice little square. So let's cut to what that looks like, because that's a pretty easy step. Okie dokie, so we've got our 4 little spaces on there, you can see right there. What we're going to do now, we're going to take our 20 amp Racer Star ESC, and this is pretty much the thing that's going to be programming or telling our motors how fast they need to spin so we can fly around, you know, nice and stable. We're going to simply be sliding this on. These 4 standoffs, these 4 little parts here, these little spaces, they're going to fit perfectly over the 4 holes in here. So we're going to put this in this way, and I'm going to make sure that these two, you'll notice there is a bit of a difference on this side. You've got your positive and your ground, so your voltage and your ground coming out. Make sure that's sticking out to the right of your quadcopter. So we're going to push that down now. You might find it's a little bit tricky with some of the plastic on here. If that's in the way, just simply cut it off and then slide it over the top. Looking good. Well, actually it's looking pretty messy, but let's keep on with the build. Alrighty, now it was really important that we put these on facing out to the right, because what that actually does, this is a 4-in-1 ESC, and it means it's got ESCs 1, 2, 3, and 4. There's actually 4 of them inside here, and they need to correspond to their correct motors. So ESC1, which is just here, and that's these 3 wires, needs to connect up to motor 1. ESC2 and these 3 wires need to connect up to this motor here, which is motor 2. This is where it switches around a little bit. ESC3 on this side actually corresponds to the motor down on this side, and ESC4 right here needs to hook up to this motor up the top. Get out of the way, that blue cord. This one needs to connect up to the motor right there. Now when we're connecting these up, it's very, very simple. What we're going to be doing, I'm going to be cutting the wires about halfway down, and then we're simply going to be soldering them together. So let's zoom in and have a look at us do that right now. Alrighty, now you notice we've got 3 wires coming off our ESC and 3 wires also coming off our motor. Hopefully you guys can see that anyway. In order to make our motor spin clockwise, we need to connect them straight up. So the first wire connects to the first pad of the first wire of the ESC. The middle wire connects to the middle wire coming out of the ESC, and then the third wire connects to the third wire coming out of the motor. So all we need to do is simply cut them and join them straight up. So let's go through that process now. Make sure you don't cut them too short. It's okay to have a little bit of slack, but the last thing you don't want them too short at all. So I'm going to actually put mine together, give myself a little bit of slack either side, give it a little snip, just like that, and then I'm going to do that to all 3. So there's motor 1 done. Now what we're going to do, we're going to strip the ends and get them ready for soldering together. So all you need to do, take your wire cutters and simply just strip off the last little bit of silicone on the end of your wires. Very, very easy. Don't cut all the way through, you just want to expose some of that wire underneath. Do the same on your motor side. Alrighty, and now we're going to pre-tin them, and then we're going to get ready to stick them together. Alright, now the process of tinning, really what that is, it's just putting solder on there first, and soldering is really, really easy. And if you haven't done any soldering before, definitely check out this video. I'll leave a little link up here to my soldering guide for quadcopters. Really, really simple. It's definitely not as hard as you think. But what we're doing now, doing this process, it's called tinning your wires. It makes it very, very easy in the future for joining things together. So we're simply going to heat them up, put a little bit of solder on each one of the ends we want to solder. If you're wondering what that big blue tab is here, that's called blue tack, or that's what we call it in Australia anyway. So it's not made for soldering, but I find it very, very useful. Okie dokie. And now what we can do, we can get ready to solder them together. Now what I'm doing here, I'm actually going to put my heat shrink on, so that's just a tiny little bit I've cut over. And you want to do this anytime you're going to be splicing some wires together. That's what we're calling it, splicing wires. Because if they touch, they're going to have a short. So you need to make sure this heat shrink's on here, and that way it's going to stop our quadcopter from having a very bad day. Now we're simply going to join them up, so I'm going to use a little bit of this blue tack again to hold my wire down, push it on here, and then I'm going to join them up. So there's one join. I'm going to slide the heat shrink back over. There's one. We'll make sure we're doing the middle wire, so we'll do the middle wire right here. So that's 2. And then we've got 1 left, the third wire. Let's do that one. And I'm just going to spin it around so I can get a bit of easier access to it. Solder this up. Hopefully you guys can still see this. Put my heat shrink over the top. There we have it. That is our first motor done. So that's how simple it is. Alrighty, so we've successfully done motor 1, and you notice because they're soldered in a straight line, so none of these wires are overlapping each other or crossed, that's going to cause our motor to spin in a clockwise direction if you're using these motors. What we need to do, that's going to be the exact same for this motor up here, and then on these ones, this is the only place that's a little bit different. What we actually do when it comes to motors 2 and 3, we actually need to cross over 2 of the wires. So this the first wire from your ESC goes to the first wire of your motor. The middle wire is going to go to the outside wire motor, and the last wire of the ESC is going to go to the middle wire of the motor. And all that means is two of these wires are going to be crossing over each other, and that's going to reverse the direction of your motor. If you muck this up, don't worry too much, because all it means is your motor is going to spin the other way. All you'd have to simply do is, if it was on this one, if this was around the wrong way, you'd simply desolder this one, switch them over, and then your motor is going to be spinning the correct way. So that can often be a problem for first-time builders, and depending on what sort of motor you get, so maybe you get some different motors, and depending on the direction of the windings, that's a very, very simple way that you can change the direction. I also want to point out, look, you can do this through the software, but this is a very, very basic guide, and I think it's easier to explain this. I'll leave a link down to the software down below where you can program your ESCs to spin in different directions, but that's a little bit more advanced, so I'll leave that down in the comments below. But this is the simplest way that I think that you guys will be able to get this and get as many people flying as we can. Alright, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to wire up all these ESCs, so motors 1, 2, 3 and 4. I'm going to wire it all up, and then we'll cut back and have a look at our nice, clean, good looking quadcopter build. So let's check that out in 3, 2, 1. Boom! Alrighty, there it is. So looking a lot cleaner than before with all those wires sort of neatly trimmed up. Just again, I want to word people up. So here you can see this is ESC2, so it's connected to motor 2. And to get that to spin in an anti-clockwise direction, at least with these motors anyway, we just had to cross the wires over. So this middle wire coming out of the ESC is going to the outside wire motor right there, and the outside one from the ESC, the outside wire, is crossing over and going to the middle wire. So look, it's not too much of a big deal if you get it around the wrong way. All it means, you're simply just going to have to cut them again and swap them over and then resolder them. So pretty easy, but yeah, I just wanted to point that out. And the other thing to note, this is actually ESC4 down here, and this one's ESC3. So in this board, for some reason, they've swapped it over. I know it's a little bit annoying, but this one is ESC3, so you can notice that's one of the ones that needs to be swapped, and that's one of the ones that needs to be crossed, so that goes to this motor right here. And this one, ESC4, motor 4, so that's one of the ones that was straight, because we want that one to spin in a clockwise direction. So pretty simple stuff. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to heat up this heat shrink that I've simply slid over the top and then shrink it down, and we can get on with the build. Now I know a lot of people aren't going to have this tool, and in the past you can use your wife's hair dryer, you can use some matches, just don't burn the wires too much, or a lighter or something like that. But I've got this tool, so I'm going to use this. But all you need to do is just heat it up very, very quickly, and it should shrink right down. It should form a nice, very, very tight little electrical proof little connection right there. So fantastic. All right, let's get on with it. Now the last little thing I did before we move on, I just put a little bit of duct tape or electrical tape over the wires to keep them nice and close to the arms, so when the props are spinning, they're not going to cut any of the wires right there. So it's looking pretty good so far. Alrighty, now it's time to connect up our Maytec PDB. And what a PDB is, it stands for Power Distribution Board. And the first thing we want to do, we're going to be soldering a little bit to this board, but we want to make sure we put in our XT60, and that's going to make it very easy for you to connect your battery. So it's simply going to plug in and out. And my little tip to do this, turn your quadcopter around. We're going to be sitting it like this, making sure that the you can see the negative is on the curve side, the flat side is the positive, so making sure they line up with the correct terminals on the PDB. You can see positive and negative over here, so making sure that lines up, because you definitely don't want to get that around the wrong way. Sit it there, and now we're ready to solder. So we're going to heat it up and put a bit of solder on the top. This is probably the largest solder joint you're going to have to do, so it's going to require a little bit more solder. So if your soldering iron can go up a little bit hotter, I definitely recommend putting it up, and it might take a little while for it to warm up. So you'll probably see that happening here anyway, taking a little bit longer, but once it gets going, feed your solder in, and it's going to take a little bit, but you should be left with a very, very nice shiny joint. So there's one of them. Do the other one. Alright, now we've got our PDB. What we want to do is same sort of process as before. We need to put our little, I guess you're going to call them these tiny little plastic standoffs. We're going to screw those in, and just like we did for our ESC, these are the things that are going to sit and they're going to hold up our PDB. So let's screw those in right now. And then we're going to simply sit on our PDB. We're going to also make sure that our XT60 or whatever connector you're using for your battery, it's probably going to be an XT60 if you're following this guide, is coming out to this side as well. That's pretty easy. And then I'm simply going to put these two little parts on the top just to hold it down for the moment. We might unscrew them later, but we're going to be doing some work on here, and we want it to be as nice and secure as possible because we don't want it to move. It's looking more and more like a quadcopter every day. Alrighty, so that's looking pretty good on there. What we're going to do, we're going to flip it over, and this is why 4-in-1 ESCs are good, because we don't need to wire up any of our ESCs except for this one wire here to provide our voltage. So underneath, you'll see right here, this is the flat side, so this one's going to be the voltage, and this one underneath right here, that one's going to be the ground. Always double check on the top side anyway, and the way you do this, we're just going to simply strip our wires and then solder them straight up for a super clean, nice looking build. Alrighty, so you can see there it is, nice and shiny, nice little connection. Now if we plug this in, we'd actually get some, we'd actually be able to fire up our ESCs, and our motors should be looking very, very happy. Okie dokie, so believe it or not, we're actually, that's kind of the hard stuff done. What we need to do now, we're just going to solder up our PDB, and that's going to make it ready for our flight controller, our VTX, so one of these bad boys, and our camera, and we'll almost be done. So really the only thing we need to worry about, usually all these pads around here are all for the ESCs and all that sort of stuff. Because we've got a 4-in-1 and we've already connected it up, we don't have to worry about that. So all we're going to be doing, we're going to be soldering our ground, 5-volt ground, and 12-volt. Now this part's going to differ a little bit depending on if you're doing the standard version or if you're doing the upgraded kit, because when it comes to connecting the camera, on the standard version you can use the 12-volt pad, but on the upgraded version that camera actually uses the 5-volt pad. So that's going to be the only little difference. Regardless, let's just solder them all up just here. Very, very simple. In and out, in and out. You don't want to be spending too much time on the PDB. So yeah, this part you should be pretty used to soldering by now. Alrighty, so now that that's done, it's all looking pretty nice and shiny. What we're going to be doing, we're going to be hooking up our VTX, or our video transmitter. Now in this version, this is just straight a 200 milliwatt one, and in the upgraded version, I think it was like for an extra $1, you could use one that was switchable. You could change its power level if you needed to, down for 25, this is it here. This one can go to 25, 50, or 200 milliwatts, but you can see very, very similar, and we're going to be hooking them up regardless of which one you get. Check in the description down below, but regardless of which one you get, we need to match it up to the voltage, and in the case of both of these ones, it's simply powered by 5 volts. So what we're going to do, we're going to cut the ends, we're going to tin them like we're used to, and then we're simply going to hook the ground wire up to the ground, and then the red one up to the 5 volt. But we are going to have to hook some other things up to the 5 volt as well, so make sure you don't take up all the room, because we're going to be putting a few little things on that pad right there. Now you notice in this build we've actually got some other wires coming off here as well. The only one we really need is the yellow one. So the red and black one here, they can be used in some different purposes, but we're not going to be using them in this build. So I'm simply going to cut them because we're not going to be using them, and we'll take them out. I am cutting them at different lengths because we don't want them to touch and short, and I'll probably put a little bit of electrical tape or heat shrink or something like that on the ends as well, just to make it nice and snug, so we're not going to be having any shorts. And of course, we're going to cut it at this end because we're going to have to be splicing these wires. So all you should really have is a nice little yellow wire coming out the end like that, and maybe tape those ones up so they're not going to touch anything and cause any electrical shorts. And then we can move on to putting in our camera. Alright, now speaking of the camera, this little one here in the standard, and I really recommend people upgrading to the one we're having the upgrade kit, but you'll notice this one has 4 wires. This white wire here, that's actually standing for audio. We don't need that at all, so I'm just going to clip that off. I'm going to clip off all the ends as well, because we're not going to be needing that. And then we can set about hooking this up. So you're going to have a video one, and then you're going to have obviously your voltage and your ground. So we're going to work with the voltage and the ground right now. So I'm going to strip the ends and pre-tin them like we know, so we know how to do that, because we've done that quite a bit by now. Oh, these ones might be a little bit more tricky to strip, so just be careful. You just want to expose the wire underneath. There we go. I'm going to pre-tin them, and then I'm going to hook these ones up. So the ground obviously goes to this little ground right here. Actually, it doesn't even matter what ground you're using, but so ground's common. But the voltage, this little camera can even run on 12 volts. So I'm going to hook that one up just to save a little bit of space, because I don't want this pad to get too crowded. I'm going to hook the red one up to this 12 volt pad right here. So I'm going to do that right now. Alrighty, and just take note how quickly you get in and out when you're soldering. You don't want to be holding on heat there for a long time, because that's how you can damage some of the board. It should only take between 1 and 3 seconds between the time you get your soldering iron on to the time your job's done, especially with such little soldering jobs like these ones. Righty, so now you should have one yellow cord right here. Let me just put my soldering iron out of the way. You should have one yellow cord from the camera, one yellow wire, and one yellow video wire from your VTX. Can you guess what we're going to do now? It's pretty simple. What we need to do, we're going to connect these two up. So I'm going to give myself a bit of room, so I've got a bit of play in here, probably about, let's say, that much. I'm going to chop a little bit off the end, and then I'm simply going to, just like we did before, how we joined our ESC wires together, I'm going to join these two wires together as well. Alrighty, so now let's talk flight controllers, because our quad is very much coming together. We're almost getting towards the end. All we need to do is put in a flight controller. Now the two flight controllers I have here, this one is the Naze Rev 6, and this is an F1 board, and this is the SP F3, and this is an F3 board, and that talks about the processors, those F numbers. And in my opinion, look, I can't recommend, if you're going to do any of the upgrades recommended in this video from the base $99 version, definitely spend, I think it's like another $3 or $4. It's definitely not very much at all to get yourself an SP F3. So what we're going to be doing, we're going to be wiring it up with one of these, but I'll also be putting this one in my upgrade version, and I can't recommend this one enough. Anyway, let's get ahead with it because the process is fairly similar. Flipping them both over, you notice they've got some pads under here, so these rows here from numbers 1 to 8, and these ones here from 1 to 6, that's what we're going to be soldering to. So the signals along here, that's the inside row with the little square around them. We need to solder, put a little bit of tinning on the first 4 ones of those. So let's do that now. I'm going to stick it down with a bit of blue tack because that's going to make it easy. So this one's for the standard version on the Naze Rev 6. You just want to make sure your soldering iron's nice and clean, and then get in and out as quick as you can. I'm going to start at 4 and work my way backwards. 4, 3, 2, 1. And then we're going to do the same on this board here. 4, 3, 2, 1. And I've already done a little bit of work on here because I was testing some things, but that's how it goes. And then also on the outside here, you'll notice all I want to do, maybe under pin number, let's do it under pin number 6, I'm going to do these two, and that's going to be the ground and the positive. So that's going to be the parts we're going to connect up to actually power our flight controller off our PDB. Alright, so that's all the soldering you need to do on this side. Now we're going to cut some of these wires. These are our motor wires, and we're going to be joining these up to our flight controller. Now to do this is actually pretty simple because this part comes out right here. This part comes out of your little stack, so you don't need to be connected and tethered to your flight controller the whole time. And all we're going to do, we're going to get rid of this black wire because we don't need that at all. It's not useful in this build. And you can simply put in a little Stanley knife or a little X-Acto knife or something like that and pull the pin out. So that should be pretty easy. And then I'm going to cut the ends off here because we don't need any of these plugs. So let's cut those off. Alrighty. And now the next step, what I'm going to do, I'm going to strip the ends so we know how to do this. You can actually use your fingernails on these ones to make it a little bit easier. So I'm going to pull the silicone off the end of these wires. There we go. And then I'm going to pre-tin them, or I guess I'm going to tin them up so we know how to do that by now because we've done that quite a bit. Alright, so now that's done, we're going to simply wire it up, and this part is important that we get this in the right order. So the motor wire 1, that's going to be coming off our ESC 1, that needs to go to pad 1 here, so orange to pad 1. You notice how quick it is. The next one, it was orange, then the next one is purple, so purple goes to pad 2. You really should only have to touch it and it should join. The third wire coming along, so we've got is yellow, so yellow goes to pad number 3. And then on the last one, pad number 4, you use the green wire right here. Alrighty, and it'll be very similar. I'm going to do the same one just here so you guys can see if you were using it on this board right here. So this is the SP F3. We'll do the upgraded version as well, so I'll solder one of those up. Same process. So to pad number 1, we're going to go orange. Alrighty, now you would have got some extra wires with your ESCs when you bought them, this little plug here. What I'm going to do, I'm going to cut them right at the base because I want to use 2 of these wires. So I'm going to snip them right there, trying to keep them as long as possible. We don't have much to play with, but so I'm going to use purple and yellow, that'll do. Excuse me. I'm going to strip the ends like we know how to do, so I'm stripping the ends right there. I'm going to pre-tin both ends, or tin up both ends. So let's do that. And this is what we're going to use to power our flight controller. So we're going to connect it up, connect it to these little pads here, run it off our PDB, and then that's pretty much the soldering done. Very exciting. Alrighty, now it doesn't matter what color wires you use here as long as you remember. So the outside pad, I guess the one closest to the outside, and this is the same in both cases, this is going to be your ground. So let's simply tack that on, and the way you're going to want to do it, you're going to want it to have it running back inside. So here's the ground. Let's get in and out with this. There we go, so there's one. So purple is going to be my ground, and in this instance yellow is going to be my voltage, so I'm going to simply connect that up as well. Okie dokie, not too bad. And then this is where it gets pretty fun. So we're almost done. I think there's just literally these last 2 solder joints to do. What we need to do, let's get that one out of the way. Move these, excuse me, I'm going to tidy up a bit and then I'll show you. That's a bit better. So now what we need to do, make sure we're going to hook these up to our 5 volt and our ground on our PDB right here. So not the 12 volt or anything like this. Make sure you're getting them around the right way. So if in my instance I said that yellow was positive, so yellow was my voltage, I'm going to hook that up right there. So I'm simply going to connect that. There we go, there's one. And I said that purple was my ground. I just double checked, it's all looking good. I'm going to solder this in as well. There we go. That's it for our soldering. Okie dokie, so now these last little standoffs we're going to screw on just here. We've almost built what's called our stack. I'm going to put this on top. And then this is where really, if you can help it, depending on how your wires go and how short you cut them, because there is just enough room. I mean like by the millimeter. You could put it this way, which really, it doesn't matter which direction or orientation this goes, as long as you tell the flight controller in the software when you plug it into your computer which way it's facing. So you could do it this way, and really the only thing you need to think of is how are you going to access the USB. So on this side it's a little bit difficult, so I'm going to turn mine around so that's 180 degrees on the yaw axis. That's changed around, that just fits. I'm going to put mine in like that, and that's going to let me plug my USB so I can do some easy programming from the side of the copter. I'm going to secure that down now, and the last thing also, you want to just re-plug in this little port just here. It's only going to go in one way, just back in where you took it out of the ESCs before. So pretty simple stuff. Now I'm just putting together the upgrade version, so the SP-F3, very similar. And a good little tip for both of these, just put a little bit of hot glue if you have some. It's definitely recommended, because that's going to stop these snapping off in some of the hard crashes or some of the vibrations, because these things cop a ton of abuse. I'm going to go ahead and keep putting this in and then finishing up with the upgraded version. Now I'm just going to jump over to the upgraded version right here. Because this camera, this one only takes 5 volts in, so it doesn't have a wide range of voltage like the other one we're using on the standard, but it is going to offer a better picture. But I'm simply connecting that up, so to power the camera right here, its voltage is going to the 5 volts. So that just make sure you're not connecting it to the 12 volt, because that's what we did in the standard version. So I'll probably hit this with some hot glue as well, and then proceed as normal like we did, and hook up our SP-F3 as well in the exact same fashion that we did on our standard version. So I'm going to do that, and then we'll continue with the builds. Now you do get one spare one that comes with your thing, but I'd say you definitely need 2, so have a look around. Look, there might be someone like, I don't think that'd cost more than a few cents anyway. So what we're going to do, screw that down. That sounds funny, but anyway, screw that, and then look, it's pretty much now just putting the frame together. So this is the upgrade version. This is the standard version we've got right here. So very similar. Let's set about in putting them together and making them look like a real deal quad. Oh, bonus, I didn't realize this, but the LS200 actually comes with a little kit of standoffs, so that's fantastic. You could probably use some of those to hold in your flight controller. So there we go. Alrighty, so we've got the standard version right here, all looking very good, and also the upgrade version. One thing I do want to mention, and this is going to, regardless of which one you choose, and I really recommend the SP flight controller to put in there, because that's going to make a bit of a difference to you flying around. But these tabs right here, so on the standard versions, it's these first 3 pads just here, number 1, and then you've got 2 little ones just here. This is where you're going to have to hook up your receiver, and the same goes over on this side. This is where you hook your receiver up on the SP-F3. So this little port here, the plus and minus, so the voltage and the ground, and then also the RX right there. Alrighty, now the fun bit. This is probably my favorite fun bit of the build. We don't need to do any soldering, anything like that. We just need to put it together like a little bit of Lego. So we're going to open up the rest of our L200 kit. We've got a couple of standoffs here we can use. We're going to put it all together. Don't worry about using these short ones at all. We're just going to be using the long ones. So you should get 6 long ones, and they simply go in these ports here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in those holes, and you do get some extra camera mounted bits as well, so you can use them if you want. Now everybody's different. Sometimes people use foam, sometimes people use zip ties, zip ties, sometimes people use electrical tape, double-sided sticky tape, a whole bunch of different things to stick their quads together. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put my 2 together, and then I'm going to show you how I do it. So let's cut to what these look like when they're all built up in 3, 2, 1. Whoop! Boom! Look at these bad boys right here. So you can see on the left, this is the standard version, and we've got the upgraded version right here. And I can't believe how good they looked. They turned out better than I was expecting. So all I had to simply do, I just put the standoffs in there, and I used a little bit of Loctite as well. They're those silver things you can see, and a little bit of Loctite to screw the bolts in. And then really all I had to do, the only parts we needed to mount were the VTXs, which were done the same on both of these quads. So I just simply put them here, put a little bit of heat shrink over them, clear heat shrink, and then zip tied them down so they shouldn't be going anywhere. And then I just poked their antenna through this back little bit like this, through that back little hole, so that shouldn't be causing any dramas. And then towards the front, this was the only difference I had, and I'll show some photos of these on the screen anyway. So for this one, I actually just hot glued together a little bit of the foam out of the box that the VTX came in, so that's recycling some of that foam in there. Look, it's not the best, but again, I mean, this is a $99 quadcopter, so some of the more expensive upgrades and definitely some of the better things. Check the description down below for some more options. You do get more options on how to mount your FPV cameras. And then this one, even though this is a little bit of a small upgrade for this camera, you can see this one screwed, it actually came in with a little bit of the frame. You can actually screw it straight in, so that one's not going anywhere, so I didn't really need any extra mods for that. But overall, I can't believe how exciting these things are, and so cheap, absolutely ridiculous. All right, now probably the hardest choice of all, and that's what color props are you going to put on this. There'll be a whole ton in the description below, but let's have a look at some of the colors that I've got, because I know that I couldn't fit them all on the screen at the start of the video. So let's check those out now. Alrighty, so props are a massive personal thing for a lot of people. It's a way to give your quadcopter a little bit of flair, and there are some differences actually in the props, but between their performance from prop to prop. But what we're going to talk about, I guess, is any 5-inch prop. I'm going to list a whole heap down below, because these were just some really cheap ones that I could get for you guys. But there's a whole ton, and I'll link them down below. But as long as they're 5-inch, that means they're going to fit on this frame and they're not going to run into any problems. Look, you could put a 4-inch on here, but you're going to be losing a lot of speed. And if you try to put a 6-inch, it's going to run into some standoffs right there. So, I don't know, drop a comment down below. What one do you think you're going to pick? I think for this one, I'm really liking the look of maybe like a yellow and red theme. And then this one, I'm loving the colors of this. These ones, I think, are like an extra 30 cents or something like that per pack between the difference. These ones are going to be probably a little bit more robust, because there's an extra blade on here to break, so these ones are probably a little bit more beginner friendly. But honestly, any of these props, any of the props I've linked down in the description are going to be fine. I'd love to know what color you think. I think for this one, I don't know, I'm kind of torn on. Now, the one big thing, regardless of whatever color you choose, props come in 2 directions. So on here, remember we spoke about this right at the start. So you notice on the top here, you've got some little arrows, and that indicates which way the motors are going to be spinning, or at least which way they should be spinning anyway, as long as we've wired it up correctly. But these are some props. These ones are made to go clockwise, so you can see the side where the air is going to hit is going to be spinning in this direction, and then you've also got some reverse. The blade is facing the other way. They're going to go on motors 2 and 3. So make sure you're putting your props correctly on there. If they're not on the wrong way, it just means the thruster is going to be back to front. So all you'll have to do, switch it out, make sure you put your props on the correct way, and then you should be ready to rock and roll. Anyway, let's put some props on these and have a look at what our finished $99 quad and also our upgraded version look like. Let's cut to that in 3, 2, 1. Bam! Look at that. Look how good that looks. Now, one thing I do want to mention, when you're putting these props on, a lot of people, I say, hey, I can't tighten them down, and you're going to actually need a tool, because these are little lock nuts on there. And remember, the top of these threads goes a different direction as well, so you're just going to tighten them down a little bit. These are going to be normal thread. The motors on these ones, so motors like this one, it actually goes the reverse direction. So when you want to tighten it, it's actually going to go the reverse way. So just be mindful of that. Anyway, look how good it looks. I couldn't resist the yellow. A little bit of a hint before, I used the yellow zip tie and also a green zip tie, because really, I think these things look fantastic. So that's it. We're done. All we need to do now is put in a radio and a receiver based on whatever radio and receiver system that you're going to be using, because there's tons of heaps of different ones out there. They're all going to be compatible. All the drone racing ones are going to be compatible with these. So like the Turnigy Evolutions, I'll leave a big list in the description down below as well. So definitely check that out. And yeah, that's it. That's our $99 quadcopter. I can't believe it. Under $100 for something that is going to absolutely scream. And I mean, like, that's a real performance quadcopter, not your cheap toy stuff whatsoever. And for a few bucks more, you can definitely tell you're going to have an absolute monster. Alrighty, so there it is. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. There's my $99 FPV quadcopter build, so the standard and also the upgrade, and they are absolute monsters. So I know you guys are going to have a ton of fun out there. And remember, check the description down below because everything that you're going to need is down there, including the extras too, like the radios or the batteries, some possible FPV goggles, and all that sort of kit you need to get into the hobby. But hopefully, this $99 quadcopter is going to bring people a lot of fun. Now, if you like this video, definitely hit that thumbs up button because that's one of the best ways to share this video around and help the channel grow. And that's what this is all about. I want to get you guys into the hobby. I want to share this with as many people as I can and get as many people into the hobby and flying around and just experiencing how much fun FPV is. So yeah, definitely hit that thumbs up button. I guess there's really only one more thing to do. Let's take these things down to the field, put a few batteries on them, rip a few packs, and have a ton of fun. So I'm going to leave you guys with some flight footage filmed on both of these. And yeah, other than that, subscribe for more FPV related content, and as always, happy flying. Down here in the field, time to have a bit of fun after all that work. Let's put these builds through their paces. Let's do it.
Have a look through my goggles, Johnny.
Alrighty, so hopefully you guys enjoyed that video. Definitely subscribe if you're new to the channel and check out these videos. And I'm also going to leave a little link here to my Patreon page because I've got some fantastic Patreon supporters and I like to give back to them as well. So if you want to join the UAVfutures family, there's things like bonus Velcro straps, little bundles of FPV goodies and things like that that also get sent out. Anyway, happy flying.